cooking transition. The United Nations roadmap charts a path to universal access to clean cooking by 2030 and net zero cooking by 2050. I urge you all to put it into practice and to ensure finance is available for sustainable development and climate action, including clean cooking. Developed countries must honor their climate finance commitments and all countries must push for a strong finance outcome at COP29 this year. And I urge you to support United Nations proposals for an SDG stimulus of $500 billion a year, including action on debt to scale up affordable long-term financing for countries in need. Together, let's clean up cooking and create a healthier, safer, more equal world for us all. Thank you.
We will hear more announcements from governments and from the private players. So I would like to, and after this, I will come and announce the total amount of money raised in this very meeting. It's my great pleasure and honor to invite Her Excellency Madame Michelle Bachelet on stage, who will be moderating this session. Former President of Chile, and he's been the High Commissioner for Human Rights at United Nations. We all know Madame Bachelet. Thank you very much, Madame President, being with us. Much and over to you. Thank you.
Good news. It looks like outside is not raining. It might be the sun shining. Let's hope so. Your Excellency, clean cooking on the global energy, health, development, gender, environment, and climate agenda. We have heard today, of course, what we know, but it's important to remember it so we can really give more, I would say, priority to this issue, that the lack of access to clean cooking has implications across so has major health implications, resulting in premature death due to respiratory diseases, with women and children bearing the worst consequences. Moreover, women are already burdened with household responsibility, spend up to 5 hours daily gathering cooking materials, exacerbating, as we have heard as well, socioeconomic disparities. So this challenge, coupled with the environmental toll of deforestation, underscores the interconnectedness of clean cooking with broad development, gender equality, humanity and the environment. All of these issues are part of the core focus of the number of multilateral fora. However, to date, clean cooking has not featured too prominently. This is the year where that is changing. Already we saw clean cooking appear in the G7 Energy, Environment and Climate Communique with direct reference to this summit. Our next speakers all represent a number of different circles and fora where clean cooking stands to feature more prominently in the coming years and get a clear multi-year agenda and mandate needed to assure continued progress and advancement on this agenda. It is vital to make 2024 a turning point on ensuring clean cooking access for all becomes a priority across these interconnected agendas. This is what we are here to discuss with the global leading voices from these spheres. To begin this conversation, it's now my privilege and honor to introduce our distinguished speakers. Dr. Tedros, my dear friend, Director General of World Health Organization. His Excellency Mukhtar Babaye, COP29 President-designate and Minister for Ecology and Natural Resources of Azerbaijan, Mr. Simon Steele, Executive Chief Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Ms. Damilola Ogunbiji, CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy, and Her Excellency Chrysoula Sakharopoulou, Minister of State for Development and International Partnership of France. Thank you very much, Madam Minister, also because France is our great host country. So I would like to invite Dr. Tedros to take the floor here in the lecture.
Thank you, President Bachelet, our moderator. Your Excellency, President Samia Hassan of Tanzania, Your Excellency, President Nasimbe of Togo, Your Excellency, President Bio of Sierra Leone, and Your Excellency, Prime Minister Sture of Norway, and IAE Executive Director Biro, ADB President Adesina, honorable ministers, fellow panelists, dear colleagues and friends. Bonjour à tous et à tous. It's an honor to be here. And I thank Tanzania, Norway, the IEA, and the African Development Bank for your leadership on this critical issue and for co-chairing this event. I will join my brother Akin actually in saying I'm talking here today not only as Director General of WHO, but as a child who witnessed the problem with clean cooking. I thank the presence of all the political leaders, and I'm really glad to see that because that will give political momentum. As you know, breathing and cooking are essential for life. And yet, for millions of people, they're a cause of disease and death. From stroke, cancer, WHO estimates that every year 3.2 million people die from household air pollution generated by dirty fuels and stoves for cooking. And around 1 quarter charcoal, dung, and crop waste are their primary energy source for cooking, including more than 900 million in sub-Saharan Africa, and that number continues to rise. Women, children, and marginalized communities are the worst affected. Polluting fuels are a threat to the health of people and the health of our planet. As President Samia said earlier, house the leading sources of black carbon, a powerful, short-lived climate pollutant. In some places, the use of polluting fuels for cooking contributes to almost half of all ambient air pollution or indoor air pollution. This is not only a technical problem, but one deeply entwined with poverty, development, and infrastructure. To solve this challenge, we need leadership and partnership. We need political leadership, and I thank Your Excellencies, President Hassan, President Macron, President Gassimbe, President Bio, Prime Minister Sture, for demonstrating that leadership today. And I hope you will continue to mobilize your colleagues to join you. And we need financial leadership, and I thank the ADB for the significant commitment today, $2 billion US. Also to the European Union, to PM Sture, and those who are making pledges today. And we need technical leadership, which is where WHO can make the biggest contribution. By the way, Prime Minister Sture told you about his work in WHO in the past, so I think WHO is represented through him and me. And with clarity from WHO, the full support we can give to this very important cause. And we have a long history of supporting countries with recommendations, tools, and technical resources to reduce air pollution and the disease it causes. And fourth, we need partnership. We need each other. Our meeting today is a powerful demonstration of the different strengths we all bring. And I commend the IEA for bringing us together. And thank you, Mr. Biro. And also for the technical consultations you have done to prepare for this summit. WHO is committed to working with you and with our fellow UN agencies to accelerate access to clean cooking fuels as a top development priority. In 2018, we created the Health and Energy Platform of Action, bringing together a strong network of countries, UN agencies, civil society organizations, researchers, and other development partners to accelerate access to clean cooking for health. And together with our partners at the World Bank, we recently released the first global roadmap for a just and inclusive cooking transition, which outlines the strategy to eliminate cooking poverty and promote net zero clean cooking for all. In March next year, WHO will host our second conference on air pollution and health, and clean cooking will be high on the agenda. Thank you all for your political leadership, the financial leadership, the technical leadership, and the partnership that you're demonstrating today. My thanks especially to the IEA for mobilizing this broad coalition of partners to support some of the most vulnerable populations in my continent, Africa. WHO welcomes and affirms the Clean Cooking Declaration because breathing and cooking should always be a source of life, not a cause of death. Merci beaucoup, and I thank you. And back to you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros, and for your leadership on continuing giving so much priority in the health agenda as well. And now I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Mukhtar Babayev, COP29 President-designate and Minister for Ecology and Natural Resources of Azerbaijan, here to the lectern.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we express our thanks to the International Energy Agency and the co-chairs for the opportunity to discuss African clean cooking and the plan for COP29 to enhance ambition and enable action. It is a pleasure to join everyone and build on the partnership Azerbaijan has developed with Africa, most recently through our period as a chair of the non-aligned movement. Ladies and gentlemen, the direct impact of climate change on the African continent is clear and present, from droughts in southern Africa and recent floods in East Africa. When we meet in Baku for COP29, these affected communities must be front and center in our minds. We will work across two parallel pillars. They are mutually reinforcing, where action on each sends a strong signal in support of other. This involves setting clear national plans to keep 1.5 within reach and leave no one behind, while also putting in place the finance we need to deliver. On the one hand, we need the parties to signal their own determination to act with ambitious indices, national adaptation plans, and transparency reports. On the other hand, we need enable action by unlocking climate finance. Within this framework, we are aimed to use opportunities of clean cooking. First, the next NDCs will be a chance to present country-owned vision for sustainable development. This should include developing tailored strategies for promoting clean cooking as a part of comprehensive national plans. The COP29 presidency within the Troika platform is also working to enhance international cooperation to ensure that parties receive all the support they need to design and implement the next generation of NDCs. We are already working with our colleagues from UNFCCC, UNDP, and the UN Secretary General's Office to ensure that we use full potential and capacity on the UN system. COP29 presidency is actively engaging with multiple actors across international and domestic public finance, multilateral financial institutes, and the private sector. These financial actors should be ready to allocate higher shares of their investment portfolios also to support clean cooking. This year, we must negotiate a fair and ambitious new climate financial goal, which can contribute to addressing challenges such as clean cooking. Additionally, functioning of Article 6 will enable parties to implement their climate plans and targets to promote sustainable development and environmental integrity, including using market-based approaches. In these views, we believe that all parties will actively engage in Article 6 negotiations and will make every effort to achieve a tangible outcome during COP29. As COP29 presidency, we will do our best to facilitate this dialogue. Dear friends, by providing financial resources, technology transfer, capacity building, and policy support, African countries will be better enabled in transitioning to cleaner and more efficient cooking solutions. This support can improve health outcomes, reduce deforestation, mitigate climate change, and enhance energy access for millions of the people across the continent. We as COP29 presidency are committed to doing our part to enhance ambition, enable action, and ensure that we can provide clean cooking access for all of Africa by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Babayev, for that remark and the leadership during COP29 in this direction. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Simon Steele. He is the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. I will invite you to the lectern.
Michelle. Excellencies, colleagues, friends. Around 2% of overall human-caused emissions comes from cooking. And 2% may sound like a very small number, but that is equivalent to the emissions that are generated by aviation, emissions generated in the shipping sector. So it is significant. At COP28, international donors committed to investing billions of dollars into clean cooking, which can make a dent in the 3 to 4 million premature deaths attributed to household air pollution globally. And this is one of the clearest examples I've seen of the benefits of actions outweighing the costs, in particular in support of women and children, in reducing poverty, in improving health, increasing energy access, whilst at the same time fighting climate change. This is an incredible opportunity. And we have heard some of the numbers, just $4 billion per year over the course of the next 6 years to address this particular issue. But the reality is, to date, despite all of the momentum that was generated in Dubai last year, the funding mobilized, both through the private sector and through international development community, has generated a fraction of what is needed. And we have to change that. Again, we've heard 1,000 of us here in the room, representing many of the entities who can actually make a difference. But what is important with the pledges made, this cannot be a case of simply recycling old pledges. We need to build that momentum and move forward. And as Fatih said in his opening, we need to leave here with some concrete actions and a very, very clear path forward as to how we're going to address this particular issue and take advantage of the global opportunity that is presented to us. Which is why the UNFCCC is committed and endorses the Clean Cooking Declaration today. And the UNFCCC will be working with the IEA to check progress on the pledges and commitments made to ensure that there is full transparency and accountability as we move forward. In addition, and as Minister Babayev outlined in terms of the vision for COP29 ahead of us, there is a unique opportunity this year for countries to come forward with the next generation of national climate plans, NDCs, and to include within those plans efforts and initiatives in addressing clean cooking. It is a unique opportunity. Currently, only 60 NDCs from low to middle income countries have specific actions that speak to addressing clean cooking. So this year is the opportunity, one small step that added to all of the other small steps that are needed can accumulate to the tremendous change that is required if we are to close the ambition and implementation gap between now and 2030. And as we continue to hear, as I close, we have the technology to achieve this. This is low-hanging fruit. We know the benefits of cleaner cooking, and now is the time for us to scale this. And the benefits for climate, for health, for women and children, for equity is enormous. But with the will of those of us here in the room, we can achieve this. I thank you.
I think it's very important to remember that it can be done, and it's not that much money. So I would like now to invite to the lectern Ms.
Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to join you today to speak about an issue that I am particularly passionate about, access to clean cooking. However, I am afraid that if current trends continue, nearly a quarter of the world's people, mostly in low and medium-income countries, will still lack access to clean cooking solutions in 2030. Falling short of our SDG 7 target. And this is a key milestone in the Development Bank and the World Bank on electrification, but we cannot say the same when it comes to clean cooking. So what is the United Nations and some of my colleagues and Sustainable Energy doing to ensure that clean cooking is really for all? Let me elaborate on three key things. Firstly, policy and planning. Secondly, financing, and thirdly, innovative solutions. For policy and planning, we continue working with governments and partners to promote the transition to pathways and roadmaps to guide the transition to universal access to clean cooking by 2030, and of course net zero by 2050. At SE4All, we advocate for the support and development of national integrated energy plans, where we integrate planning and implementation of both electrification and clean cooking from the outset. This has been demonstrated really well in the great work we see in Malawi, Madagascar, and obviously Rwanda, who has very, very keen and launch of the 750 million Nigerian distributed access through renewable energy scale-up program, DARES. But we have to make sure that as we are performing these energy access programs, clean cooking has to be prioritized as part of them. I used to run the largest energy access program, of which Mr. Adesina is very familiar with in my home country. And one of the things I really regret is that we made such an effort in solar electrification, but we totally forgot about clean cooking. And what we're doing now is going back to those communities. So we do not have time for 2030 to make that mistake again. As a second critical intervention when it comes to policy and planning, is the identification of investment-grade opportunities. We are supporting several countries to develop the implementation of their energy transition investment plans, of which transition to clean cooking has to be, and it is a key part of what we're developing. We're already seeing countries such as Ghana, Kenya, and His Excellency spoke today from Sierra Leone about showcasing a pipeline of investable projects across sectors that will lead to decarbonization and renewable expansion to ultimately attract capital, especially from the private sector. On finance, we have heard about the chronic lack of financial flows to the clean cooking sector. In Africa today, investments represent only 6% of what is necessary to achieve our universal access targets by 2030, and I'm very glad today for all the pledges we've heard so far. We look forward to collaborating with the IEA to monitor, analyze financial investments, to enhance the transparency and effectiveness of clean cooking progress. We're also very thankful for the Clean Cooking Alliance for spearheading the principles for responsible carbon financing in clean cooking. That will be highly effective in delivering what we call the African Carbon Market Initiative. On innovation, exploring the use of resource-based financing to close this gap is key, and our Universal Energy Facility, which focuses on standalone system, is also demonstrating that, with pilots running in Lagos with women who are cooking for a living and showcasing that they can actually afford these solutions. Cooking with clean electricity also offers promising scalability and sustainable alternative, and that's why we are championing the Global Electric Cooking Coalition, GECO, launched at COP20. Cooking also goes hand to hand with education. Therefore, in collaboration with the World Food Programme and UK Aid funded MEX and other partners, we've designed a large-scale institutional e-cooking initiative in schools. We're very happy to see Her Excellency Tanzania talking about it today, because that is the first country we're going to roll out. In conclusion, I look forward to working with you and alongside all of you in your programs and your processes to make sure that Africa especially has a just and equitable transition when it comes to clean cooking. Thank you all for listening.
Still have some time. We have to recover now. So would like to invite Her Excellency Chrysoula Sarapopoulou, Minister of State for Development and International Partnership of France.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, chère Michel, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, chers amis. J'aimerais tout d'abord remercier et saluer l'engagement de M. Fatih Birol. Merci beaucoup, Fatih, pour votre engagement qui est très sincère. Et je sais que quand vous parlez, vous tenez beaucoup à ça. Mais permettez-moi aussi de saluer une grande femme, Madame la Présidente Suluhu, qui est à travers ça et promouvoir la promotion de l'émancipation des femmes. Bien sûr, je remercie le Premier ministre Stohr pour son engagement et mon ami Akin pour la Banque de développement africaine. I switch on in English now. I have two simple messages for you, my friends. First of all, in a world of polycrisis, we need solutions that address at the same time the climate, the nature, and development crisis. It is also a matter of efficiency, as budget constraints are growing globally. My second message is that such one-stop solution exists, but they need strong political leadership. We need to put them at the core of every agenda, from climate to health, from biodiversity to gender equality. With school feeding and electrification, clean cooking is one of the most powerful one-stop solutions. All of you have underlined that the clean cooking addresses food insecurity, deforestation, carbon storage, gender equality, and health, my dear friend and brother, Dr. Tedros, and many more SDGs. So, why, at the end of the story, we're underinvesting in clean cooking? This is a reality. And what are we missing? First, we lack a systematic integration at the international and the national levels. Beyond COPs, health forums, and the UN, I insist on the integration of clean cooking in national energy planning. Through its support to the JET Peace, France would like to help more actively its partner to integrate this important issue in their policies. The second message that I think that we missed is that we need visibility and a constituency to promote clean cooking at the international level. That is why, building on the outcome of this summit, France would like to propose to formalize a coalition of countries committed to clean cooking within the framework of the Paris Pact for the Planet and the People. The pact, supported by fifth joint efforts. Clean cooking perfectly illustrates the pact's main message. No one should choose between fighting poverty and protecting the planet. And the last element that is missing to elevate clean cooking is money and expertise. France does its parts. For example, in Tanzania, we have funded experts within the Ministry of Agriculture to work on clean cooking, but we need to go faster. That is why I'm proud to announce today that France will systematically seek to integrate clean cooking within its €2 billion portfolio of annual investment in energy. In developing countries. This is why we commit to invest up to 100 million euros in clean cooking in the next 5 years. Mesdames et messieurs, l'Afrique. Merci.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister, and in particular on that concrete prioritization that France will make on clean cooking. Well, we have just heard from global leaders on climate health and development about how the international community can ensure advancing the global clean cooking agenda. Today's summit, I think, underscores that intent and also elevates ensuring access to clean cooking for all as like a global agenda priority. And I'm sure that this is true, but let's walk the talk. So I would like now to introduce my dear friend, Dr. Kande Jumkela, Chairman of the Presidential Initiative on Climate Change, Renewable Energy and Food Security of Sierra Leone. I have to say just a little anecdote. When Kande was of the Mobilizing Greater Commitments.
Thank you very much, President Bachelet. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a year ago, Fatih Birol called me up and said, Kande, we're looking at the analysis on clean cooking, and the numbers look terrible. We're worried. What do we do? I said to Fatih, let's be radical. He said, what does that mean? I said, frankly, I'm not sure. He said, well, I'm on my way to Brussels. I'm going to be meeting with the Commission. Then I said, I know something. Ask them for real money. So for a number of us today, 20 years in this march, it's an emotion. Some good friends, Sheila Parocha, Dr. Abu Zaid, Commissioner for Energy and Infrastructure, many other friends here. Fatih, you have exceeded expectations. Thank you very much for convening this summit. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to inaugurate this pivotal next segment of the IEA Summit of Mobility. This summit marks a critical juncture in positioning clean cooking access at the forefront of global energy, climate, and development agenda. To make meaningful progress on the global clean cooking agenda, mobilizing financial commitments and outlining concrete action plans are paramount. There is a critical role of bringing more resources to bear on clean cooking from various leading stakeholders, governments, development agencies, development banks, the private sector, and philanthropy. Multiple types of resources are needed, from development support, technical assistance, to private sector investments. Identifying possible investments and establishing a clear way forward for mobilizing them will send a resounding message. Achieving universal access to clean cooking is a shared priority for the international community. Our next distinguished speakers embody a strong understanding of what it takes to move the needle on clean cooking and what it takes to accelerate the implementation of clean cooking initiatives. Their views are instrumental in elevating clean cooking on the global development agenda. To begin the conversation, it is now my privilege and honor to introduce our distinguished speakers. His Excellency Dan Yannick Jorgensen, Minister of Development, Cooperation and Global Climate. Bennion, Minister of State for Development and Africa, United Kingdom. Ambassador Sean Patrick Maloney, Ambassador to the OECD from the United States. The unpleasant task of being a tough task master, because I'm told we're running over 30 minutes behind, but it's for a good cause, and I'm sure lunch can wait a little, because now we need the real action, the near pledges from government to private sector, and it's my pleasure to first call upon.
Thank you so much, my friend. Excellencies. High-level representatives. First of all, I would like to thank you, Fatih Birol, for your incredible leadership. We know each other very well. But one thing you don't know is that I've actually privately given you a nickname. I call you Elvis Presley. Because of the song, you know, where he goes, a little less conversation, a little more action. It's really the spirit of everything you do, and certainly the spirit of why we're here together today. Preparing a meal for your family should never jeopardize the health of you and your children. It should be self-evident, yet more than 1 billion people in Africa depend on polluting fuels and technologies to cook their meals every day. And the number is rising. If nothing is done, it'll be much higher in the future. We have to change this trend. And today presents an opportunity to do just that. Switching to clean energy technologies is life-changing and contributes to a broader sustainable development. It improves health. It protects the climate and the environment, it empowers women, and helps households save time and money. Clean cooking is at the heart of the climate and development nexus. I had no doubts when I was invited to this summit. We need to step up. We need to act. Denmark is already contributing to several innovative global funds, such as the World Bank's Clean Cooking Fund and the Spark Plus Africa Fund. Many Danish NGOs have also clean cooking programs targeting some of the most vulnerable populations. But I've listened to you, Fatih. We need to do more. So, I'm pleased to be able to announce that Denmark aims to double our contribution to clean cooking. Over the next 4 years, we will allocate $72 million. As a first step, I can announce that we will allocate $20 million in contribution to the World Bank's Clean Cooking Fund. Denmark will also use this opportunity to advocate for the MDBs, the UN agencies, and climate funds to dedicate more resources to clean cooking. In this context, we very much welcome the African Development Bank's Sustainable Energy Funds for Africa's initiative to establish a dedicated clean cooking sub-program. Achieving universal access to clean cooking in Africa will depend heavily on the availability of sufficient international financing. Concessional finance should play a catalytic role in scaling up private sector investments, and mobilize innovative financing models. However, concessional financing will never be enough. To succeed, we need financing policies and partnerships to go hand in hand. All countries should make the clean cooking sector a more attractive and vibrant investment opportunity and strengthen entrepreneurship within clean cooking. International financing, combined with country-led political commitments, national programs, and blended financing, is key for achieving the progress that we need. This should also be part of the new rounds of national and determined contributions to be prepared this year. Addressing clean cooking is also an opportunity to put women back in the driving seat. Women are change agents and should be at the center of any clean cooking program. Finally, let me underline the importance of targeting the poorest households, including displaced settlements, marginalized communities, and indigenous peoples. They cannot bear the full cost of accessing clean cooking alone, and we cannot and should not leave anyone behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now recognize His Excellency Prince Jamie de Bourbon de Pramé from the Netherlands.
Presidents, Prime Minister, Excellencies, dear friends, it's really a privilege to attend this first international summit on clean cooking. When we talked about these issues in the past, you were maybe 60, 100 people in a room brainstorming how to promote this sector. But this is the first time we really have it on the global agenda. So congratulations to IEA, to Tanzania, Norway, African Development Bank, and the Clean Cooking Alliance for taking the lead. Now, this is a great opportunity. We focus on clean cooking primarily with a focus of health, safety, economic well-being, dignity of women and children. But this is, as a climate envoy, I have to emphasize and echo Simon Steele, also a great opportunity to at best 2% of global emissions. And as he said, it's equal to the aviation sector or the shipping sector, or to put it in the country perspective, somewhere in the spectrum between Brazil or Japan's annual emissions or Indonesia's annual emissions. So it's a great goal to focus on. Now, governments and businesses are looking for cost-effective ways to offset emissions. And this income could potentially go directly to the most vulnerable people we're trying to help. On financing, the EU is leading on climate finance globally. And we are one of its member states. And our public finance for climate is fully grant-based. And we've been a dedicated partner for more than a decade on clean cooking. We only started to really account for it since 2021. It was part of the basket of SDG 7. But since 2021, we already spent 132 million euros on this. Now, we have doubled our ambition recently on SDG 7.1, which includes clean cooking, to reach not 50 million, but 100 million people by 2030. And to be able to do so, we have an extensive portfolio of direct investments in energy access, locally and bottom-up, but also we're mobilizing multilateral funding, where most of our funding is, and the private investments. To reach this goal, this additional ambition, last year, and we haven't announced it anywhere, we silently did so, and if Fatih Birol would have invited me a couple of weeks earlier, I could have waited a little bit more and announced it here. But we silently approved another 210 million euros to go to SDG 7.1. So we were a bit ahead of the curve, Fatih, but I hope we can use it. And now we also added, we were looking, what can we additionally do for this summit here? We on Team Europe, together with Spain, Sweden, the Netherlands, and the European Commission, we're adding funding for the regional clean cooking action for West Africa. Now, it's not just about finance, but also of government policy. And in my previous experience, I was on loan from the Dutch government to the UN Refugee Agency, and I visited Rwanda. And Rwanda made a decision for all of its population to move to clean cooking, but had to start with the refugee camps. Why? You've got large institutional group of people supported by international organizations who are buying their energy to go towards clean cooking. In that case, it was LPG. They could buy in volume, reduce the price, create a market, and then start with a better market position to sell the local population. You don't resolve it just with that, but institutional buyers is an incredibly good start to bring cooking to the populations. So it's about money, it's about government policies, and lastly, it's about innovation. 4 years ago, electric cooking was not part of the spectrum. Right now it is. So there's a lot of leapfrog technology ready to go. Thank you very much.
We thank Your Royal Highness for your intervention. We now recognize Right Honourable Lord Bennion from the UK.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and thanks to the IEA, to Norway and Tanzania for helping bring us together, and to Fatih for shining a light on this issue. Can I start by just complimenting my Dutch and Danish colleagues for mentioning displaced people. This was brought home to me recently on a trip to Africa, and it's vital that we hold them in our minds as well. But it cannot be right that some 2.3 billion people around the world lack access to the clean cooking that so many of us take for granted. And while every little helps, when it comes to making sure that we keep 1.5 degrees target alive, the ripple effect of making progress on this goes far beyond the 1 to 2% of global emissions alone. Toxic fumes from the wood and charcoal burned for cooking contribute to around 3.7 million premature deaths around the world every single year. And as we've heard, women and children, especially girls, bear the brunt of collecting firewood, so changing will help keep them safe and prioritise the employment and education that are so vital to fulfilling their potential, as well as that of their families, communities and countries. And of course, we can help countries protect and restore the world's great forests, including the Congo Basin, that stores immense quantities of carbon and supports a vast web of life, millions of livelihoods, and rainfall right across the African continent and the global weather systems on which we all rely. Of course, for so much of the transition away from fossil fuels and towards cleaner, greener, more sustainable and more renewable forms of energy, the market is racing ahead, even ahead of politics. When it comes to clean cooking, however, this is not the case. So for our part, the UK has committed £67 million to clean cooking projects since 2016, helping millions to lead longer, healthier, more prosperous lives from Africa to Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific. And today I'm delighted to announce a further £8.5 million to help communities across Tanzania and Uganda to access the innovative electric cooking solutions energy. And as we think ahead and work together to make the most of COP30, that must stay in our mind. And of course, the UN Nature COP, CBD16 in Colombia, we expect a big focus on forests as well. For all of us now, we need to increase the investment from all sources and get existing flows of money moving in the right direction as quickly as possible if we're to reach the $4 billion needed annually by 2030 to solve this. And I'll finish by saying this. We who are lucky enough to have a leadership role often find our time in these roles very short. And so let's focus on this. This is a solvable solution. And when we look back on our times in the various roles that we have, we can see that we made a step that changed the quality of people's lives. And my final point is that we should hold in mind that woman in the film we saw right at the beginning and millions like her, and know that we can keep this relevant, not from the high-level international climate speak that we use, but relevant to hers and millions of people like her that we can, whose lives we can change immeasurably. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that intervention, and thank you for reminding us that it's about real people. Thank you so much. We now recognize Ambassador Maloney from the United States.
Much. Let me first also acknowledge my Dutch, Danish, and British colleagues, not just for their commitment to clean cooking, but for their commitment to stay within the time allotted, which I think was very impressive. So congratulations to all of you, and I'll renew that commitment to getting you to lunch by doing the same. It's wonderful to be with you. Thank you, Dr. Umkela. Thank you, of course, to the world leaders who preceded us. Your leadership and your commitment is inspiring. It's great to be here with Elvis Presley, a great American, also known as Director Fatih Birol. His leadership has truly been extraordinary, and I'm so happy to be here with our U.S. team, John Mitchell from U.S. EPA, who's been working together with USAID, the Department of Energy, and our other U.S. colleagues, along with the Clean Cooking Alliance, to advance these issues. You know, 36 years ago, I went to rural Peru as a young volunteer and worked in some very remote locations. And I can remember very vividly the woman who was the mother of the family I lived with, without electricity or without plumbing or without water, running water, used to prepare the family meals every day. And she would do so, of course, over an open fire. And we would collect the wood to do that. She would then also take some of the kerosene, I believe it was, and she would put it in her mouth, and she would spray it using her mouth as an aerosol sprayer over the family table and wipe it down so that the flies would not gather so thickly on the table. And I can remember thinking then, as a young man, how dangerous this must be to keep this kerosene in her mouth day after day, to just do the routine cleaning. What I did not think about was the fact that she also cooked every day over an open fire, and that all the mothers did when they gathered together to cook communally to feed the village day after day. And I did see the worry on their faces when their young daughters and children would go out to gather that firewood, knowing of the risks. So we know that these are real risks, both to human health and, of course, to women's safety. And of course, it's not just a matter of environmental and energy justice. There's also the climate threat. We've heard 2% of global CO2 emissions come from household cooking, putting it on par with aviation and shipping. And the United States government is taking many approaches to promote clean cooking, including using electricity, biogas, biomass stoves, even LPG to transition to net zero emissions. Over the next 2 years, I'm pleased to announce the United States government expects to spend more than $40 million over 2 years to advance the goal of clean cooking. That money will go to many initiatives, and particularly for testing and standard setting, so we can deploy new cook stoves with confidence. Already, we support the work of 11 cook stove testing labs in Africa. We are working toward a cook stove labeling initiative to assure minimum standards are met, and we are encouraging governments to adopt and use ISO clean cooking standards. To quote our former Secretary of State, First Lady Hillary Clinton, clean stoves could be as transformative as bed nets or vaccines, saving and improving the lives of millions. With more than 40% of the world's population using coal or biomass to cook or heat their homes, the scale of the problem is massive, but we can solve it. Not just for the sake of our climate future, but for the health and safety of our most vulnerable global citizens. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for that statement. I want to underscore that it was Madam Clinton who mobilized the coalition to establish the Clean Cooking Alliance. Thank you very much for that leadership. Let us thank our public sector ministers for that pledge and for the announcements. We hope many more will follow. Thank you, gentlemen, for supporting this cause. Thank you. Public-private partnerships are the way to go. We need to leverage more capital, and technology. So I'll invite you in groups of 5s, and each pledge will be about a minute so that we can catch up for lunch. It's my pleasure now to invite Patrick Pouyanné, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, Total Energy. Mr. Alexander Eaton, Chief Executive Officer, Sistema Bio. Russell Hardy, Chief Executive Officer, Vitol. Peter Scott, Chief Executive Officer, Burn Manufacturing. Mr. Guido Brosco, Chief Operating Officer, Natural Resources, NI. We'll go straight to the committee. Total Energy. Go ahead, sir. Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Fatih Birol, to organize this summit. As you know, Total Energy is very involved in Africa. And considering our involvement, we think that access to clean energy, and in particular to clean cooking, is a very important matter for our company. In fact, to address this situation, we believe, and I think the IEA shares this view, and as well, I read the conclusions of the G7 ministerial meeting on climate, energy, and environment, that LPG is a pragmatic, existing enabler for access to clean cooking, positively impacting health, gender equality, and the environment. LPG produces much less harmful fumes, saves an average of 2 hours per day spent collecting wood, and reduces deforestation. It's a safe, reliable, and competitive source of energy for Africa. And so we are today welcoming the call to action, and we want to contribute. We are already producing and distributing LPG in Africa, reaching 40 million people. But today we want to do more thanks to this call for action. First, and I am answering to the President of Togo, by producing more LPG in Africa, and in particular in Uganda, where we are investing $100 million to produce LPG in our Tilenga projects in order to be able to distribute it in Uganda. Uganda, only 5% of the population today have access to LPG. Thanks to that project, we'll expand the distribution. And our ambition is not only in Uganda, but more countries. We want to go from 40 million people being reached for clean cooking through LPG solution to 100 million people in Africa, 85, and in India. It will represent an investment until 2030 of more than $400 million, together with the amount for the next 5 years. I hope it's a good, nice contribution.
Thank you.
And that you will understand. It will go to countries like Tanzania, of course, Mozambique, Rwanda, Uganda, and more territories where we are already distributing LPGs in Africa. I would also say a last word, that is not so much only a matter of distributing, it's a matter of making LPG affordable. And so we want to innovate and to, in particular, to spread pay-as-you-cook solution. Because when you have to acquire, to cover the deposit for cylinder, for burner, plus 6 kilograms of LPG in a cylinder, that represents $30. It's too expensive for many people. So innovating and being able to connect some device to LPG burners in order to promote pay-as-you-cook solution is also paramount importance in Africa to be pragmatic, and this is our commitment to African citizens and population. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We invite Alexander Eaton, CEO of Sistema Bio. Your turn.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, about 20% of the people that lack clean cooking access are smallholder farmers and family farmers in Africa, and they have all of the conditions that they need to be able to produce clean biogas in their homes for Tier 5, high technology, very clean, sustainable cooking solutions. We know this is possible because there are millions of people today cooking with biogas in Africa. Sistema Bio is the largest biodigester distributor on the continent, and we have tens of thousands of units that are installed on the continent, and our commitment moving forward will be to install over 300,000 biodigesters before 2030. That will mobilize $200 million of investment in the continent. And we can co-invest with farmers because by using biodigesters to produce clean cooking fuels, we're reducing methane emissions, so a very, very powerful and important greenhouse gas, and displacing biomass and fossil fuels. So let's not forget that we need to keep food security and smallholder farmers on the agenda when we talk about clean cooking, and by using biodigesters, we can produce clean cooking fuels while also producing sustainable fertilizers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sistema.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of Vitol and our affiliate company, Vivo. For those that don't know Vitol well, it's a large investor in traditional, transitional and renewable energy, production, infrastructure and trading. We have assets in 30 African countries, retail and wholesale, 4,000 petrol stations once the acquisition of Engen South Africa completes this month. And our investment in African infrastructure has long supported access to clean cooking. In recent years, we've invested over $200 million across carbon project cookstove businesses and LPG infrastructure in Africa. And we have funded over 2.1 million efficient cookstoves across 8 African countries in 8 separate projects. And our LPG distribution today spans 12 African countries and reaches more than 10 million households, and it's a footprint we certainly intend to grow. Importantly, in addition to minimizing particulate emissions, which I think everybody has heard today, every efficient cookstove also reduces carbon emissions significantly and shouldn't be forgotten. Recognizing LPG is not a practical solution for some rural populations, we're going to continue to invest in both LPG and cookstove solutions. And today, I'm pleased to announce we intend to invest across our African businesses as part of this summit, $550 million to go towards infrastructure, cylinders, distributions, and cookstoves.
Wonderful.
So that will be Vitol business, Vivo business, and our Engen business in South Africa. We appreciate that much more investment is required, and to unlock the investment needed in clean cooking, the private sector, we think there are a few key steps governments should take. So, firstly, give the industry regulatory stability and ensure the highest standards. And this is best through the support and implementation of best practice as laid out by the WLGA, which covers LPG markets. Implement an effective LPG carbon methodology that reflects the true reductions of CO2 to unlock plenty of direct investment into more finance for stoves. And finally, fully implement and support the Paris Agreement Article 6. Article 6 is the market mechanism, and that will enable market forces and incentives to help push the cooking.
Thank you.
The cost of the current cooking practice is too high in terms of health, society, and deforestation, and we feel all stakeholders must work together on practical solutions to accelerate the rollout of clean cooking. And we look forward to engaging with governments, NGOs, and our energy sector colleagues to solve the problem together. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me call additional private sector to the stage and we'll move on. I wish to invite Greg Morey, Chief Executive Officer, Cocoa Networks, Belinda Ikezobo, Vice President for Emerging Markets, Power, Shell, Ethan Kay, Managing Director, BioLite, Alan Ebobise, Chief Executive. Leveraging now, additional $2 billion. It's still coming. Wonderful. We now invite Peter Scott, Chief Executive, Burn Manufacturing.
Thanks. It's a great pleasure to be here. I've been working in clean cooking for over 35 years, and so I've devoted my entire life to do this. And so it's beautiful to see all of the people in this room who share that commitment and finally seeing it get the attention that it deserves. So I run Burn, which is the world's largest cook stove company and carbon project developer. So we've produced over 5 million stoves. We have a capacity to do 500,000 stoves a month right now, and we design all and manufacture all our stoves in Africa. And because Africa is a diverse place, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So we make the world's best biomass, wood, charcoal, LPG, electric stoves, and we make them in Africa. So we employ over 3,500 people, 50% of whom are women. The commitments we'd like to make today is that right now we have manufacturing facilities in Kenya and also in Nigeria, but today we're committing to building new manufacturing facilities in Malawi, DRC, and Ghana. Yeah, last year we raised over 60 million. Yes, why not? Clap, yes. Woo! The beginning. So, of course, afterwards, if people would like to talk to me about opening new manufacturing facilities on the continent, we would love to do that. Last year, we raised $60 million in carbon credit pre-finance that we delivered to our customers. So I don't think people totally understand that right now we have the solution for this crisis. It's absolutely in our hands right now, and that solution is carbon credit pre-finance. A stove that would normally cost $40, which no one could ever afford, I can deliver that anywhere on the continent with my team for about $2. So with carbon credit finance, it's solved. It's done. All we need to do is for the people in this room commit to invest in carbon credits and to purchase carbon credits in the future. This year, we will deliver $50 million of carbon finance subsidy to our customers, but we could deliver $250 million with our partners. So please, if you'd like to partner with Burn and help roll out biomass, LPG, and electric solutions, please talk to me afterwards. Thank you so much.
We need carbon finance to make the solutions affordable for the poor. We recognize Guido Brusco, Chief Executive Officer, NI.
Gentlemen, good morning and thanks for the opportunity today. In the last year, we have set as a company an ambitious target to achieve carbon neutrality on scope 1, 2, and 3 by 2050 with a solid roadmap of progressive targets reflecting our commitment to the energy transition. And the strategy is based on quite a large number of action activity to transform our business, while the residual emission would have been offset with high-quality carbon offset, gradually switching from the carbon avoidance to the carbon removal. And in this framework, we voluntarily designed and launched our Clean Cooking program in 2018, which today is reaching already almost 500,000 beneficiaries in Ivory Coast, Mozambique, Rwanda, Angola, and the Republic of Congo. This program is rapidly providing access to safe and highly efficient cooking devices, targeting millions of households who are relying today on inefficient cooking methods. So our program foresees also an extensive assessment of and monitoring during the entire life cycle to make sure that they are using the proper weight. And this would allow also us to have a deep socio-economic view on the situation, to maximize the local content, create job opportunities, and also promote the local cook stoves producers. So to guarantee high-quality projects, we also believe that the international community should implement a comprehensive list of principles to guarantee a responsible carbon finance and the integrity of the voluntary carbon markets. So to conclude, on these premises, I'm very happy today to take the opportunity of this event to share our plan, which is to provide clean cooking access to more than 10 million beneficiaries in sub-Saharan Africa by 2027. And finally, fostering the shift from improved to clean cooking solution. Our ambition is to reach 20 million beneficiaries by 2030 And this is associated with an estimated expenses of $300 million and even more in the following years.
Thank you, Enai. Thank you. Thank you so much. We recognize Greg Morey, Chief Executive Officer, Cocoa Networks. I visited your plant in Kenya.
Is the global leader in this new bioethanol cooking fuel industry. We now serve over 5 million people in Kenya and Rwanda. And so that makes us the largest modern cooking fuel utility in Africa outside the LPG industry. We've invested to date over $200 million in creating this scalable third pathway for modern cooking energy utilities, building on the solid foundation laid by electricity and gas. Bioethanol cooking utilities are now proven at scale. It took the gas industry 70 years to achieve 10% penetration in Kenya, and it took bioethanol just 4 years. Right? So speed and scale is what is required to solve the charcoal epidemic in Africa. Bioethanol cooking is quickly scalable and designed for partnering. We partner with host country governments with investment framework agreements around the enabling legislation. We partner with infrastructure owners and sustainable bioethanol producers, and of course with global corporate and government buyers of energy transition carbon. So COCO stands committed to work with our partners, current and future, in order to scale up this 5 million and hope to achieve a significant dent in the IEA's forecasts that bioethanol cooking can serve 100 million people by 2030 and 500 million by 2040, a third pathway for solving this problem with modern clean molecules and clean electrons. That is what Africa requires. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam President, I'm sure you are pleased that the men outnumber the women